Good morning, everyone. My name is Samuel. I really want to be taking this Windows Server administration. So before we go ahead, let's take a look on what we're going to cover. So here is the course outline. The first thing we're going to cover here is the understanding RAID and the RAID type. So after that, we move to the second one, which is the understanding Microsoft Active Directory. After that, we'll move to the third one, which is the Active Directory structure. So we're going to cover everything down to configuring a policy and that miscellaneous task. So the first thing in this outline is what we call an understanding server hardware and operating system. So when we're talking about server, so what do we understand about server? So here is a definition of what server is. So server are high-powered computer built to store, process, and manage network data, application, and other systems. So basically, when we're talking about server, so server is just like a big computer that can give resources to any other system. That's what we call a client. So for instance, let's assume that we have a system on the network, and all those systems, before they can go or come up to use the internet and browse to do their day-to-day activities, they need what we call an IP address. So let's now assume that the system is coming up. There's something that they need to make a request to for them to get an IP address so that they will be able to do their day-to-day activities. So a server can act in that scenario. A server can act as in DHCP so that it can be given all those small system IP address so that they will be able to do their day-to-day activities. But when we're talking about our normal computer, which is our normal system that we are using, there's no way our normal system can be given any other system capacity. Or when I'm talking about that, it's like there's no way our system can be giving another system a resources. There's no way our system can be controlling another system. But when we're talking about server is a machine that can control any other system. Be you clients, be you are a HP, you are a Dell, those are the system I'm talking about. But here in this definition here, they say server are high-powered computer. So when you're talking about high-powered, which means that a server is a computer that is built in with a high capacity to be able to control any other system. And server can store. What does store mean? Which means that inside server, we can store our files, BU documents, BU application, BU videos. You can store it on a server for future uses, and processes and manage network data, application, and other systems, which means that server is a device that we can use to control any other system, and you can use it to manage, and we can use it to process some data on the system. So here it says that servers are used by organizations to manage access to a centralized resource or service in the network. So basically, when we're talking about this, let's assume that we have a resources that our company is using to do their day-to-day activities. And that resources, you want to implement some policy on who can use it and who cannot use it. That resources, we can put it inside a server. And inside that server, we can use to manage access to the resources. Maybe we have sales, HR on the network, and we have a file that's meant for HR. You don't want sales to having access to it, so you can make use of a server to implement that policy. That's the reason why we use server on an organization, because server is just like a body, a big body that organization relies on. So these are the explanation of what server is. So the next thing we are moving into here is a server hardware. So basically, we know what hardware is. Hardware is a physical stuff that we can touch and we can feel. Those are what we call hardware, something that you can see and you can touch. So yes, server hardware, we have different types of server hardware. So the first one we have here is what they call a desktop server. So when we're talking about desktop server, we have some example of what desktop server is here. So the first thing here is a PowerEdge T40. Whenever you are hearing PowerEdge, This power edge is made from vendor who know as a Dell. Dell is the one that they make a power edge server. So the second one here is a ProLiant. So when we're talking about a ProLiant server is the one that is made from HP. We all know what HP is. So those are what a ProLiant server is. So the third one here is a Think server. So this Think server is one made from Lenovo. So those are the vendors that make what we call a server. So the first one is a Dell, second one is HP, third one is Lenovo, and the fourth is IBM. So anytime we are hearing when we are hearing Power Edge server, we know that that Power Edge server is made from a vendor who is called Dell. So anytime you are hearing ProLiant, we know that ProLiant server is made from a vendor which called HP. And anytime you are hearing Think server is made from a vendor who is known as a Lenovo. So those are the desktop server that we have. And if you see all these desktop server here, you will see a lot of things from it. All these desktop server, we see a lot of things that we can see inside of this server that we can't see in our normal computers. That's what make this server a high-powered computer that can be able to give to give application or to monitor any other client, which is known as our PC. So the first one we talk about here is a desktop server. We all see what desktop server is here. So the second one here is a rack mountable server, I mean. So there's a difference between a rack mountable server and a desktop server. So here is a desktop server that I show you in the front. So the difference between a desktop server and a rack mountable server is that a rack mountable server, we can put it inside a rack. So I don't know, maybe we know what they call a rack. So we can put this rack mountable server inside a rack. But when we're talking about this desktop server, we can't put a desktop server on a rack, which means that this rack mountable server is bigger than when we're talking about a desktop server. So here is a diagram of what a rack mountable server looks like. So if you look at this picture very well, from here is the back end of that server, and here is the front end of the server. So when you're looking at these two places is where the fan, here is where the fan is. This fan here is where they put the server down so that the server is not going to the heat inside the server is not going to be too much for the server. So this place is where the fan will be cooling outside. So when you look at this place, here is where we put all the hard drive. That's where we put hard drive. But here inside this diagram, we only make use of a 2 hard drive inside. The remaining one is what they call drive bay. So what's the function of that drive bay? That drive bay is just like a protection that we use to protect the place that we put in that server, so that we don't want something else to damage that place, or we don't want dust to occupy the place. So we're going to use what we call drive bill to close it so that all the place is going to be secure. But once you put in your hard drive, the place is going to now to be looking like this. But without hard drive, it's going to be looking like this. So when you're now talking about this hard drive that we put inside, there's what we call hard drive tray. So this hard drive tray is where we first put in our hard drive before we can now go ahead and implement the hard drive inside the server. There's no way we can put this ordinary hard drive, we cannot put it inside the server like that. This hard drive must enter what we call hard drive tray. When the hard drive enter what we call a tray, that's where we now go ahead and put the tray inside. Please, I hope you understand what I'm explaining here. When we look again at this diagram, this place here is the back end of the server, and this place is the front end of the server. So what does that mean is that whenever we have a physical server on a company, we have a place that we can put our hard drive, because when we have a server, there must be a place that all our information will be stored on. It's just like when we have our phone. phone as well. Our phone going to have internal memory that all the information will be storing on. Likewise, our PC. Your PC can come with 500 gig of hard drive. That's where you can store all your information on. But when we're talking about this server, we have some different servers. Some server can have like an eight eight faces that we can insert our hard drive. But when we count how many faces that this guy has here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So this place has 8 faces. So what does that mean is that you can insert 8 different hard drive inside this server. So let's assume that we have a one server, a one hard drive that is 1 terabyte. If you put 1 terabyte here, you put 1 terabyte in all the faces, which means that you're going to end up having a space of 8 terabytes because the server has like 8 faces that we can insert our drive inside. So those are the faces. But when we look at the back of this server, we're going to we see a lot of ports, a lot of LAN ports on it. This LAN port here is a place that we can use to connect our server to the switch. So we can use as many ports. Let's count the ports. Here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So here now we have like 9 LAN ports that we can use to connect our server to the switch. So let's now assume maybe you want to configure what we call the redundancy. We don't want our server cable connecting the server to the switch. You don't want it to be down. So because if you are using one cable to connect server to the switch, anytime that cable has faulty, there's no way the server can communicate to the people on the switch. So that's the reason why some people can use more than one cable to connect their server to the switch. In case if one cable spoil, the second cable will still be able to carry information from the server to the people on the LAN. So that's the function of these LAN ports here. So when we look over here, here is a power port. This power port here, we have at least 2 power ports. You know that when on our physical system only have 1 power port, which means that if we are using our system and if anything happens to our system, maybe we are using the system and our system has like 10%. If that 10% go to nothing, our system can go down, and without light, there's no way you can power the system on. But with this server has like 2 power ports. What's the function of these 2 power ports? These 2 power ports is just for what we call a redundancy. It's just for a backup. So let's assume that we are using this server for a real-world scenario. Maybe we hosted our website on it, and we only make use of 1 power port. What's the outcome? The repercussion of you making use of 1 power port is that, let's assume we are making use of a NEPA as the electricity that is giving this server power. Let's now assume the NEPA took light, which means that the server itself is going to down. And for that time, maybe there's some people that want to be accessing our websites. They won't be able to do what to access that particular website. So that's the reason why anytime you are making use of this server, you will be making use of the 2 power ports. One can go to the electricity and the second one can go to the solar, which means that in case if anything happens to the electricity, the solar will still be able to power on the server so that everybody will be able to access what is inside the server. So when you look here are the fan. This server has a fan. If you count the fan inside this server, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this server has like a 6 fan inside. So what's the function of this fan? This fan here are the one that is cooling this server down, because this server is what we call high-powered machine, which means that the server is generating more heat. And if there's nothing that is cooling the server down, the server might end up crashing because the heating that is coming out from the server is too much. So that's the reason why we have a fan here. So all those fans here are the ones that do what? That they are cooling the server down. So if you look at the front of this server here, these 2 faces are where the heat are coming out from the server. Likewise, your physical system, when you are talking about our normal PC, at your left hand, you will see where a face is, where the heat is coming out on your PC, which means that our normal PC only have one fan. Those one fan are the one that's doing what? That they are cooling all those PC down. But when you're talking about this server has 6 fans. So all those 6 fans are the one that are cooling the server down so that the CPU is not going to overheated. Please, I hope you understand what we explain here. And we understand the purpose of this and two power supply. And here we have like 9 LAN ports that we can put our LAN cable inside. So here I've already explained here. Here are the hard drive. We have like 2 hard drive inside this server. We have 2 hard drive and we have like 6 extra places that we can put our hard drive inside. That is what we call a drive build. So these drive builds are the one that is doing what? They are the one that is protecting this place that we insert our hard drive so that it's not going to be occupied with a dust. So when we come down here, these are the hard tray and these are what we call the hard drive. Before you can insert this hard drive on a server, there's no way you can insert this physical hard drive like this. There's no way you can insert it directly inside the server. There must be something that this server must enter first before you can now insert it on the server. So what this hard drive will enter, that's what we call hard drive tray, which means that this hard drive must enter this tray. Once it enters this tray, it's not going to be looking like this. So if you want to remove this hard drive, first thing you need to do is that we need to press on this red button. When you press the red button, this guy will jolt so you can remove it. You can't just go there and force it to remove. You can spoil the hard drive inside the server. So all what we are explaining since is what we call the server hard drives. We have already explained the server hardware when we're talking about a desktop and we're talking about rack mountable server. So, and I explained that inside the desktop server, we have what we call the Power Edge, which is made by Dell. We have Reliant, which is made by HP, and we have Think Server, which is made by Lenovo. Likewise, our window, you know that we have different vendors that are providing a window. BU, HP, Dell, Lenovo, your users, those are the people, Alienware, so those are the people that they provide a window outside. So likewise, the same thing when you're talking about desktop server. So yeah, I explained a rack mountable server, but difference between a desktop server and a rack mountable server is that a rack mountable server, we can put it on a rack, which means that we can scroll it on a rack, but a desktop server can only stay on its own. So we have already explained the hard drive inside the server when we're talking about these and we're talking about the hard tray. So when you go to the market, you buy your hard drive. There's no way this hard drive can enter the server directly. It must enter what we call hard drive tray. So when you put it inside, that's when you will now be able to put it inside the server directly. So the next thing we're going to talk about here is the server operating system. So when we're talking about server operating system, what does server operating system mean and how does it work? So here says server operating system are the core program that enable all server functionalities. So when we're talking about a server, what makes that server to be working is what we call the server operating system. It's just like when we're talking about our Windows. If we have a PC, what makes your PC to be working is what we call Windows operating system. Likewise, the same thing when we're talking about server. What makes your server to be working so that you can be using policy, you can be implementing a lot of things on it. What makes it to be working is what we know as a server operating system. So that's the reason why ESA server operating system are the core programs that enable all server functionalities. Operating system for server must be able to handle the following. So when we're talking about server OS must be able to do all this following. The first one here is the comprehensive management of user. So when we're talking about server must be able to compress management of a user. Secondly, security. It must be able to secure everything that its user is doing on the network. Maybe be your username, password, all those stuff must be able to secure. And the third one here is the processes. So server must be able to process everything that the users need to do on the network. So the next one here is that server OS must be able to manage and monitor client computer. So you know when we're talking about client computer, we are talking about the PC, the employee's PC on the network that they are using. Server must be able to manage and monitor the client computer. Server must be able to monitor and manage the software and the activities. So maybe you are working for sales and you are making use of the system. Server must be able to monitor what you are doing on the network and the software that you are making use and everything you are doing. Server must be able to monitor it. The next one says that server must be able to install and deploy application and patches to clients. So what does that one mean? Let's assume that you are working for organization and you are the IT guy of the organization. Maybe your task is to install antivirus on all the employee system. And where you are working, the employee is up to thousands and thousands of people. So if you are doing this one by one, maybe you are going from one PC to another, that's going to be giving you a tough time, which means that you can install that software on a server and server should be able to deploy it on all the employee system. That's what this guy means, which means that a server OS must be able to install, which means that anything that you want to install on the system, you don't need to be going one by one anymore. You can install all the software on the server and the server should be able to deploy it to the employee. And the patches to clients. So what does patches mean? Patches is what we know as updates. Let's assume that our organization is making use of a Windows 8. Server should be able to know that that Windows 8 is what is out of the, is outdated. Server should be able to update those systems to the latest version of that Windows. Here now we have like Windows 10 and Windows 11. Those are the latest version of Windows. So which means that server should be able to do what? Should be able to release some patches to the client, which is what we call updates. Server should be able to update all the client system on the network. So when we're talking about server operating system must be able to handle all this following. So the next thing we are going to here is the type of server operating system. So we have different types of server operating system. Hello, please, can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Okay, you can hear now. Please, I want to verify. Maybe you guys can hear me before I go on. I don't know that you are not hearing me since. Okay, I'm going to start afresh. Pardon for that. I don't know that you guys are not hearing me. So let's go to the beginning of this class. So what this class focusing on is what we call the Windows Server administration. So inside this Windows Server administration, what are we going to cover? The first thing we're going to cover here is what we call understanding RAID, understanding server hardware and operating system. That's the first thing we're going to cover. Understanding server and operating system. Please let me check. Okay, I'm here. Thank you. So let me go to where I stop. So this is where I stop. Type of the server operating system. So we have different type of server operating system. The first one here is what we call Windows Server operating system. So inside this Windows Server operating system, we have different type of Windows Server operating system. The first one here is a Windows Server 2008. Second is a Windows Server 212, Windows Server 2016, 19 down to 2022. So those are the latest version of the Windows Server operating system now, which is 2022. Likewise, when we're talking about our Windows PC, we know that we have Windows 7, Windows 8, Windows 10, and Windows 11, which is the updated one right now. Likewise, Windows 7 and Windows 8, they are the one we call the end of life, which means that Microsoft is not releasing update to them anymore. So the same thing when we're talking about a Windows server, we have different types of Windows OS. The first one here is a Windows Server 2008, Windows Server 2012, Windows Server 2016 down to 2022. So when we're talking about 2008 to 12, those are what we call the end of life, which means that Microsoft is not releasing update to them anymore. So from 2008 to 12 is what we call the end of life, which means that Microsoft is not releasing updates to them. From 2016 to 22, maybe using it on the server. So we have what we call, you know that the first thing we explain here is a Windows server. Under Windows Server OS, that's where we have 2008 to 2022. So the second one here is a Linux OS. Yeah, I'm not starting afresh. I'm starting from where I stopped. I'm not starting afresh. Okay. So the second type of server operating system is a Linux OS. So this Linux, people call it Linux. So I don't know how you want to call it your own. So inside this Linux OS, we have Ubuntu, we have Sense OS, we have Red Hat, and we have SUSE. So those are the different types of a Linux operating system. You know that Linux OS is different from when we're talking about Windows OS. Some Windows OS give what we call GUI, which is a graphical user interface. But when you're talking about Linux, most of them is what we call CLI, which is a computer interface. So inside this Linux, we have what we call Ubuntu, we have operating system, Century operating system, Red Hat, and SUSE. So the third one here is a Unix operating system. So when you're talking about a Unix operating system, we have different types of OS under Unix operating system. These are HP, IBM, and Solaris. So those are the different OS under a Unix. But mind you, when you're talking about these Windows Server operating system. Anytime you want to get this Windows Server operating system, you must get a license for it, which means that you must pay to get a license for all these OS. Being you want to get 2022 operating system for a Windows Server, you need to get a license for that. But what we're talking about, this Linux here, you don't need to get a license for it. That's what we call open source. You can make use of this Linux free. But every time you run into a problem, you need to pay before they can give you support for you. So that's the type of a server operating system for you. The first one here is a Windows Server OS. The second is a Linux. The third is a Unix. So we have different types under all those operating systems. So when we're now talking about this server, we have different types of server. Server do different work. So the first one we have here is a domain controller. So domain controller, these are what I'm going to explain how to install when we move to where we're going to make use of this. So when you're talking about a domain controller is a server that we install a domain controller on that can controlling your domain, maybe inside that domain controller, that's where you can control your users, you can control whatever the policy you want to put there, anything you want them to do, what you don't want them to do, you can use this domain controller to be controlling it. Which means that once a system is joined to the domain controller, the system is not controlling itself again. The server will be the one to do what, monitor and controlling what the system can do. And which means that before the system can do anything on the network, the server will do what? It will authenticate the system, and the system must prove that it's who you are, or you can be able to access the network. That's what the domain controller is. So we have the second server here, which is a DNS server. So we all know what DNS stands for. DNS stands for domain name system. What are the function of this domain name system? So let's assume that we want to go to a website. We know that everything over the internet knows what we call IP address. Everything over the internet, they do not understand what domain is. So maybe you are going to facebook.com. Internet doesn't understand the facebook.com. It's the responsibility of your DNS server to go outside and look for the IP address of a Facebook so that you'll be able to browse to that website. So let's assume that we don't have what we call DNS server, which means that anytime that you want to visit any website over the internet, you must know the IP address of that website before you will be able to access that website. And that's going to be giving us a tough time. Because let's assume that I want to Facebook today now. I need to put the IP address to my head. Tomorrow I'm going to Instagram, I need to put the IP address. And over the internet, we have like thousands of websites, which means that I will be putting like thousands of IP address on my head, and that's going to give me. So DNS is a body that helps us to convert the domain name into IP address so that you can be able to do what to access that particular website. So the next one here is a DHCP server. So we all know what DHCP server does on the network. DHCP stands for Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol. So what's the function of a DHCP server? So anytime you are powering on a system on a network, the system needs what we call IP address before it can be able to do the day-to-day activity. So without IP address, there's no way a system on a network can communicate and do the day-to-day activities on a network. Which means that a DHCP server is a server that automatically assigns IP address to a system on the network. Which means that once the system is coming up, your system is going to make a request to a DHCP server that, hey, I need IP address. And the DHCP server will do what? Going to give out the IP address to the system so that it will be able to come out and you will be able to make use of that particular system. That's the function of the DHCP server. Because let's assume that you are an IT guys on a company and you are monitoring like thousands of systems. And
you want to assign IP address to all those systems. You know that there's a two way you assign IP address to a system. It's either you are assigning it in a static or you are using what we call a DHCP. So if you are assigning IP address to a thousands of systems on static, it's going to be giving you a tough time. That's the reason why we can bring out what we call a DHCP server, so that it's going to be automatically assign IP address to all those systems. So that's the basic function of the DHCP server. The DHCP server is the one that automatically assign IP to a system. So the next one here is the email server. So we all know what email is. So when you're talking about email, when you want to send it in network through email, there must be a server that be responsible for that. Inside that server, you must enable what we call POP3 and SMTP, I mean. So inside that server, you must enable POP3 and SMTP. POP3 is a post office protocol, as SMTP is a simple mail transfer protocol. So anytime you are transferring a mail to someone, SMTP is the one that enables that for of a mail. But when we're talking about POP3, POP3 is the one that is responsible for what? For retrieving. So all those pods must be enabled in the email server. But the basic function of the email server is the one that enables you to email someone on the network. Maybe you want to send the email to the management, or you want to send the email to the sales, so you can use the email server. Really want to be responsible for it. Which means that once the email server is down, there's no way you can receive a mail and there's no way you can send out a mail. So the next one here is a load balancing server. So basically, we know what a load is and we know what balance is. So when we're talking about balance, is when you want the two traffic to be able to balance the equation. You don't want one to merge and one to stay idle. So let me explain this load balancing server in an easier way. Let's assume that we have a two server on our network. And inside these two servers, we are running to the same application on the two server. Maybe we hosted our website on that one website, we hosted it on the two server. So our people need to be doing what? To be browsing to that website. Without what we call load balancer, the traffic will be directing to only one server, whereas the second server will stay idle. It's going to be doing nothing. Which means that if we have two server that is doing the same task on a network, and there's not what we call load balancer, the traffic of everybody will be directing to only one server, and that server, once it's getting too much traffic, can end up crashing. So that's the reason why we implement the load balancing on the network, so that any traffic that is coming out, the load balancer will be the one to divide it into two and sell one to one server and another one to the second server, so that the traffic will be equal on the network. That's the function of the load balancing server. So the next one here is the print server. We all know what printing is. Print server is servers that are responsible for anything printing on the network. Maybe we have five people that want to print. The print server will be the one to be doing to be numbered it one by one. First come, first serve. Maybe the first person is the one that issued that printer. The remaining people need to hold on when that first one is done, so that the second one comes in, so that we have what we call match inside the printing network. So a print server is the one that are responsible for anything printing in the network. Please, I hope there is no question on what I explained so far. If there is any question, please alter it out so that I can explain more better. So here, the next thing we are going to here is what we understanding rate levels. So when we're talking about rate, what does rate stand for? The rate stands for redundant array of inexpensive disk or redundant array of independent disk. So what does this mean? A RAID is a data storage virtualization technology that combine multiple physical disk drive components into one or more logical units for the purpose of a data redundancy and performance improvement. So let me break what RAID does on the server for you. Let's assume that we have a server and we are making use of that server on our company. Maybe that server we have a lot of files, a lot of documents. We hosted our website on the server. So if in that server we don't configure what we call RAID on it, if we have the server and we are just making use of the server and we did not configure what we call RAID, the repercussion there is that if anything happened to the server or the hard drive inside the server, any document information inside that hard drive is gone forever, which means that without RAID, anything you have in server can lose everything and there's no way you can recover it back. So that's the repercussion of you not having RAID on the server. Although if you did not have RAID on the server, you will still be able to be making use of the server. Server will still be able to do the normal work the server can do for you. The server will still be able to render the job for you. But the problem there is that if anything happened to the server, all your information inside the server is lost forever. So that is important. We must have what we call RAID on the server, so that if anything happens to the server, we'll still be able to do what? To back up our file again. That's the sweet word of this RAID. So yeah, I've already explained here. Here says that a RAID is a data storage virtualization technology that combines a multiple disk drive components into one or more logical units for the purpose of what? Data redundancy. So we know what data redundancy is. Just like a data backup, for you getting the backup of your file. In case if anything happens to the hard drive, you'll be able to retrieve your data back. And the performance improvement so that the server will be able to do what? To perform improvement higher. So that anything you are doing inside the server is going to be moving smoothly. That's what performance improvement is. So inside there is this RAID. I hope you understand what RAID does on the server. If you have the issue, let me know. Let me explain again. So RAID is a data storage virtualization technology that combines multiple physical disk drive components into one more logical unit for the purpose of data redundancy and performance improvement. So the benefit of a RAID is that when we have a RAID on the server, if anything happens to the server, you still be able to back up your data so that you won't lose that data forever. So when we're talking about this RAID, we have different levels of RAID. The first one we see here is the RAID 0, which is what we call stripping. The second one here is the RAID 1, which is what we call mirroring. And the third one here is the RAID 5, which is what we call stripping with parity. The next one is the RAID 6, which is stripping with double parity, and the next one is the RAID 10, which combining mirroring and what? And stripping. So those are the levels of the RAID. I'm going to explain this. So the first one here, which is the RAID 0. RAID 0 is what we call what here? Is what we call the stripping. So here say in the RAID 0 system, data are split up into blocks that get weighting across all the drives in the array. So what does RAID 0 means? If you look here, we have block 1 here, we have block 2, we have block 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So what does that mean here? Let's assume that here is our server and here is a hard drive. We have like 2 hard drives inside that server. If you have a 2 hard drive inside the server, maybe we have a document and the name of that document is number from 1 to 8. Those are the documents that we have in the server. What does RAID 0 does? If you configure RAID 0 on the server, RAID 0 will do what? It's going to be split all the data across all the drive on the server. Which means that if you have a 2 drive in the server, the data that you have will be split across the drive. What I say here is that we have like a document. That document is from 1 to 8. That's the document, for instance. Maybe the document that we have is from 1 to 8. And we have like 2 hard drive on our server. If we configure RAID 0 on the server, that 1 to 8 document that we have is going to split scatter across all the drive, which means that in drive 1 you can see document 1, in drive 2 you can see document 2, in drive 3 document 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's how all the document will be split across the hard drive. So here they say in a RAID 0, we need minimum of what? 2 hard drive for RAID 0. So before you can configure anything RAID, when we're talking about RAID, before you can configure anything RAID on the server, you must have at least 2 drives before you can configure anything RAID. Which means that if you have a server and that server only have 1 hard drive, there's no way you can configure it on the server that has only 1 hard drive. So the scenario that you can be thinking about RAID is when we now have 2 hard drives. But when you're talking about this RAID, you must add minimum of 2 hard drives before you can configure a RAID 0. And they say drives must be the same size, same reading speed, same caching speed. So what does that mean? Let's assume that we brought a server now. I want to configure RAID 0 on the server. You know that before we can configure RAID 0, we must have at least 2 hard drives. So let's now assume that we have the 2 hard drives. The 2 hard drives that you are getting must be the same size, which means that if the first hard drive is 1 terabyte, the second hard drive must be the same 1 terabyte. If you are getting the first hard drive as a 500 gigabyte, the second hard drive must be the same 500 gigabytes. So that's what this guy is telling you. The drive must be the same size. If you are getting 2 terabytes, the second hard drive must be 2 terabytes. And the vendor that you are getting the hard drive from must be what? Please, I want you to put it in mind. If you are getting the first hard drive from, maybe you are getting this first hard drive from Dell, this second hard drive must be getting from HP. No get the 2 hard drive from the same vendor. The reason why is that, let's assume that you get this hard drive from HP and you get the second one from HP, which means that the HP hard drive going to have the same expiry date. Even if anything happens to this hard drive, the 2 hard drive will go down at the same time. So that's the reason why anytime you are getting hard drive for your server, make sure the vendor is different. Don't get the hard drive from the same vendor, because if anything happens to that hard drive that is from the same vendor, all the entire hard drive will be crashed at the same time. But anytime you are getting it from different vendor, maybe you are getting the first one from HP and you're getting the second one from Dell, there's no way HP and Dell will have the same expiry date. Dell can be down and HP will still be there to do what? Carry your work, and your people will still be able to access what is inside that drive. But mind you, if you are getting this thing from Dell, you are getting this one from HP, the size must be the same, and the reading and the reading speed and the caching speed must be the same thing. But when we're talking about RAID 0, what I want you to note in RAID 0 is that anytime you have a file in a RAID 0, all the file will be split across all the data inside the server, which means that there's no way you can have this file in one drive. You can have half of the file in one drive and the remaining half of the file be on the second drive. Because that is what RAID 0 is. So when we're talking about RAID 0 continue. So RAID 0 offers great performance. Please, if you have anything you don't understand for this RAID 0, please issue it out so that we try to explain all better. So when we're talking about RAID 0, this RAID 0 offer great performance both in read and write operation. So when you're talking about RAID 0 is the one that offers great performance both in a read and a write operation. They say all storage capacity is what is used. Why do we say all storage capacity is used? Because if you have any file, all the file will be what? Will be split across all the hard drive. So let's assume that you have like 3 hard drive on a server, and you have a file in a RAID 0. The file will be what? Will be split across all the 3 hard drive. Which means that RAID 0 won't say, okay, let me leave this hard drive, let me make use of this one. No. What RAID 0 will do is that it's going to split all the file across all the hard drive. That's why the all storage capacity is used. Here says RAID 0 is not fault tolerant. If one of the drive fail, all data in the RAID 0 array are lost. So what does that mean? Anytime we want to think about a fault tolerance, RAID 0 is not a fault tolerance. Because let's assume that we have a file, like what I explained to you earlier. We have a file, a document of 1 to 8. But when you're talking about RAID 0 is going to split all the document across all the 2 hard drive. So let's now assume that there's an issue with this first hard drive that contains a document of 1357. If this hard drive fails, your file is gone forever. There's no way you can retrieve all those files, and there's no way you can back up the file because the file is only stored on only this. Please, do you understand? That's why here says RAID 0 is not fault tolerant. If one of the drive fail all the time, the 0 array are lost, which means that if one of these hard drive fails, any data that is inside that hard drive is lost forever. There's no way you can back up data anymore. So the ideal use of a RAID 0 is that RAID 0 is ideal for non-critical storage of data. So anytime you are doing something that you don't need backup, you don't need anything like you want to store anything, you're thinking about RAID 0. RAID 0 is ideal for non-critical storage of data that have to be read and written at a high speed, such as video editing. So anytime you are doing anything that you don't need to store the information or the documents anywhere, that what you just need is a high speed, you can be making use of what we call RAID 0. So the scenario you can make use of RAID 0 is when we are talking about video editing. When you are doing video editing or you are streaming online, those are the places you can make use of RAID 0. Or you are doing online gaming, those are the places you can make use of RAID 0. So let's go to the second RAID, which is RAID 1. So when we're talking about RAID 1, the data are stored twice by reading them both data drive and a mirror drive. So basically, let's be talking about RAID 1 is different from RAID 0. You know that in RAID 0, I explained to you that all the data is going to split across all the drives on the server. But in RAID 1, the data are stored twice by reading them to both the data drive and the mirror drive. So what does that mean? When you're talking about RAID 1, we need minimum of 2 drives for RAID 1. So let's assume that we have 2 drives on our server and we configure RAID 1, which is what we call mirroring. So when we configure RAID 1 on the server, and we have like 2 drives. So let's now assume that we have a file. We have a file name 1234. Maybe you have a document that is 1234. That's the document. If you configure RAID 1, that document will be stored twice on the 2 hard drive, which means that the hard drive that has the document will now do what? We now mirror it to the other second drive, which means that the document that you have is now going to be twice in the hard drive. Please, do you understand what I explained? Let me explain it. In a RAID 1, our data will be mirrored to another hard drive. Maybe on the first hard drive, we have a document that is named 1234. That document that is named 1234 will be mirrored, which means that will be automatically copied to the second hard drive, which means that on the second hard drive as well, you're going to have the same document that is 1234. So which means that the document will now be twice on the both hard drive. So they say in a RAID 1, drive must be the same size, same rating, same reading speed, same caching speed. So I've already explained what it means for you. When we're talking about drive must be the same size, this means that anytime you are getting an hard drive on a RAID, the space of the first hard drive must be the same space of the second hard drive. Which means if you are getting the first hard drive at 1 terabyte, the second hard drive must also be 1 terabyte. It's not that you will be getting first hard drive at the 5 gigabytes and you're getting second one at the 1 terabyte. That's zero. So when you're talking about RAID, the hard drive is size. But mind you, what I explained to you, the hard drive must be from different vendor, which means that anytime you are getting the first hard drive, if you are getting the first hard drive from Dell, make sure that you are getting the second one from HP. But the drive must be the same reading speed and the same caching speed. So the hard drive must be the same information. The hard drive must not be different. So in case, when we're talking about this RAID 1, in case a drive fails, data do not have to be reviewed. They just have to be copied to the replacement drive. So what does that mean is that let's assume that I'm working for an organization and that organization have a server that they are making use. And inside that server, they only have 2 hard drives inside. And inside that 2 hard drive, they have a document. That document is named 1234. For instance, maybe the document is named 1234. And they only have that 2 hard drive inside that server. They configure RAID 1 on the server. What does that mean? That when you configure RAID 1, and we have one for that one will be mirrored to the second hard drive automatically, which means that you're going to have the file of 1234 on the second hard drive. So what does that mean is that even if the first hard drive fails, the second hard drive will still be up for us to be able to access everything that we need to access on the server. The reason why is that the information in the first hard drive is still the information on the second hard drive, which means that if one hard drive fails, the second hard drive will still be able to give all the documents and resources that we need to server. So that's the benefit of it, which means that the RAID 1 is the fault tolerance. Different from when we're talking about RAID 0. RAID 0 is not a fault tolerance. So here it says, in case if a drive fails, data do not have to be rebuilt. They just have to be copied to the replacement drive. So what does that mean is that if we have 2 hard drives on the server, maybe one hard drive fails, we don't need to do what? We don't need to go and copy the data again, because when you put that hard drive to the place that you remove that phase 1, automatically the second hard drive will still mirror the information back to the new hard drive. That's the benefit of a RAID 1. RAID 1 is a mirroring, which means that if anything happens to the hard drive, just go to the market, buy another hard drive and put it to where you remove it. Automatically, the second hard drive will do what? Will mirror the information back to the hard drive. So the main disadvantages is that the storage capacity is only half of the total drive capacity because all data gets written twice. So when we're talking about RAID 1 has its own disadvantages. We all know that there's nothing that has advantages if to also have disadvantages. But these disadvantages of RAID 1 is not up to the advantages, because the only disadvantages of RAID 1 here is on space. based on the storage, because whenever you have a hard drive, you have two hard drive and you only have a document of 1, 2, 3, 4. Maybe that document contains 500 gig. That 500 gig will be twice on the hard drive, which means the 500 gig on the first hard drive will also be the same thing on the second hard drive, which means that you are just wasting the second 500 points, because this RAID 1 is going to give what we call a redundancy, which is data backup. So those are what the disadvantages of the RAID 1, because the half of the storage is totally copied to the second one, because everything you have on the hard drive is what is stored on the second hard drive. You have already exhausted the half of the storage. So that's the disadvantages of the RAID 1. But the benefit of the RAID 1 is greater than the disadvantages of the RAID 1. Because when we're talking about data backup, anytime anything happens to the first hard drive, you'll still be able to do what? To access it on the second hard drive, so that you won't lose your data forever. So that's the benefit of the RAID 1. So what is the ideal use of the RAID 1? The RAID 1 is ideal for mission critical storage. Example, accounting system. So let's assume that you are working for account department, and you need to be accounting everything the employees is doing on the network. You need to be store all those accounting information on one place. If you are storing it in a server, and inside that server, if you configure a 0 on the server, if anything happens to the server, the company is forever. But the benefit of RAID 1 is that anytime you copied anything on RAID 1, maybe you store anything on, there's no way you're going to delete the document, because the document is still going to be on the second hard drive. In case if anything happens, first hard drive, second hard drive will be there to give you access to that document. So the only scenario you can have issue on a RAID 1 is when you are buying the hard drive from the same vendor, like what I explained to you earlier. So anytime you are making use of the hard drive on the server, make sure that you are not buying the hard drive from the same vendor. Because if you are buying hard drive from HP and buy the second hard drive from HP, those hard drive going to have the same expiring date, which means that if anything happen to if the expiring date reach, the both hard drive will be down at the same time. That's the only place you can have issue on a RAID 1. But when you are getting the hard drive from a different vendor, maybe you are getting one from Dell, you're getting second one from HP, there's no way both vendors going to have the same expiring date. So which means that HP can be HP can be down today, Dell will still be there to give you access to your document and your resources, pending the time you go and change that faulty hard drive to the new one. And once you change the faulty hard drive to the new one, the information will be what? Will be automatically copied to the new hard drive. So the idea of the RAID 1 is that RAID 1 is ideal for mission critical storage. Example like accounting system, web app, etc. It is also suitable for small server in which only 2 hard drives will be used. So anytime you have a small server that can only make use of a 2 hard drive, you can make use of a RAID 1, so that if anything happens to the first hard drive, you still be able to do what? To access your information on the second hard drive. That's the benefit of the RAID 1. I hope we understand the RAID 0 and RAID 1. So if you have any issue on it, please let me know. So let's go to the next RAID. So the next RAID here is a RAID 5. So here says RAID 5 is the most common secure RAID level. It requires at least 3 drives, but can work with up to 16. So when we're talking about RAID 5 is talking about RAID 0 and RAID 1. So this guy requires hard drive 3, differ from when we're talking about RAID 0 and RAID 1. We know that RAID 0 and RAID 1 require the minimum hard drive of 2. But when we're talking about RAID 5 require at least 3 hard drives, but it can up to 16, which means that anytime you have like 15 hard drive on your server, you can configure RAID 5. If you have 10, if you have 11, or you have 16, you can configure RAID 5. But anytime you have 2 hard drive, there is no way you can configure the RAID 5 to hard drive because RAID 5 requires 3 drives. So when we're talking about this RAID 5, we said parity data, which is the data backup and not written to a fixed drive. They are spread across all the drive as the drawing below show. So if you look at this drawing, well, when we're talking about RAID 5 is what we call stripping with parity. Stripping with parity, that's what RAID 5 is. So if you look at this drive, so let's assume that we have a server, and inside that server, maybe we put like 4 hard drives inside the server. And we have the information of block 1A, 1B, 1C. We have another one, 2A, 2B, B2. We now have information. What's going to happen is that with RAID 5, there's what we call a parity. That parity will be added across all the drives. If you look at this diagram here, on the first drive, we have what we call parity. On the second drive, we have what we call parity, and on the third drive, we have what we call parity go to the fourth drive. What is the function of that parity? That parity is what we call a data backup. So let's assume that we have information of 1A, 2A, 3A on the first hard drive. And on the second hard drive, we have information of 1B, 2B, 3B. So which means that if this hard drive falls, the information of 1A, 2A, 3A is gone. So how are we going to retrieve that 1A, 2A, 3A? Is from this parity that is added across all the drives. This parity here is the one that enables us to back up our file in case if anything happens to the file. So let's assume that this parity is only added to a single hard drive. If the parity is added to a single hard drive, and if that single hard drive is filled, there is no way we're going to back up our data and get our data back. But this parity here is written across all the hard drive, which means that even if anything happened to the first hard drive, the parity in the remaining hard drive will still give us the access to retrieve the information on the hard drive that is lost. That's the benefit of RAID 5. The parity that is written across all the drives is what we call data. So RAID 5 array can withstand a single hard drive failure without losing data or access to a data. So what does that mean? When we have a RAID 5, like what we explained to you, RAID 5 need at least 3 hard drives. So if you have a RAID 5 configured on the server, the RAID 5 can still withstand a single hard drive failure, which means that if a single hard drive fails, you will still be able to access your data. There's no way you can lose your data when a single hard drive fails in the RAID 5, different from when we're talking about RAID 0. You know that in a RAID 0, if a single hard drive fails, the information in that particular hard drive is lost forever. But in a RAID 5, even if a single hard drive fails, you will still be able to access your data. You won't lose your data in the RAID 5. So what are the advantages of a RAID 5? So the advantages of a RAID 5 here, the first one said read data transaction are very fast. So in a RAID 5, the read data transaction is very, very faster. So the second one says if a drive fails, you still have access to all data, even while the failed drive is being replaced. So what does that one mean? Here is the diagram of a RAID 5. Let's now assume that this first drive fails. You will still be able to have access to the data because this parity here is written across all the remaining hard drive. This parity here will give you the access to retrieve the data inside that field's hard drive path. Those are the advantages of a RAID 5, which says if a drive fails, you still have access to all data, even while the failed drive is what is replaced. So let's look at the disadvantages of a RAID 5. The first disadvantages of a RAID 5 here says drive failure have an effect on throughput. So what does that mean? So for instance, let's assume that we have a server. Maybe inside that server, we configure RAID 5, which means that we are using like maybe 3 hard drives. Let's just examine we are making use of the 3 hard drives. And when we want to put that server, that hard drive inside that server, we are making use of a port 1. If you are making use of a port 1 to put the first hard drive in, the second port is a port 2, and the third port is a port 3. That's the 3 ports that we are using to insert the hard drive inside that server. So let's now assume that there is an issue in a port 1, which means that this hard drive in a port 1 crash. Maybe you go to the market and buy another hard drive. Anytime you are bringing that hard drive back, you can't just go ahead and insert it in any port. You must make sure that you know which port you are removing the hard drive from. Because anytime you are configuring a RAID on a server, that RAID will be attached to the hard drive port that you insert the hard drive inside the server. Maybe you have already used like a port 2 and port 3. The RAID will be attached to that particular port 2 and port 3. So which means that anytime there's an issue on the hard drive in port 2, you must make sure that you label that hard drive, name the port that you remove the hard drive from. So when you get to the market, you buy another hard drive, make sure that you are putting that hard drive inside that port 2 that you remove it from before. Because if you remove the hard drive from port 2 and you just go to the market, you don't even care about the port you remove it from, go to the market and buy another hard drive and you just go there and put it on port 4, there will be issue and the server will not be able to come up. There will be issue on the server and server will be down, which that's the reason why they say the disadvantages is that drive failure have an effect on what? On throughput. So anytime we have a drive failure, make sure that you note which port the drive is filled. Anytime you are getting another hard drive, insert it where you remove the hard drive. So that's the first one. That's what is the first was here. So let's go to the second one. The second one says if one of the hard drive in an array using 4 terabytes fails and is replaced, restoring the data is review time may take a day or longer time. So let's assume that we now have a server configure RAID 5 on it. So we have like maybe we will have like 3 hard drive on the server. If one of the hard drive fails and you go to the market and you buy another hard drive and you put it inside that hard drive, put it inside the port. So when you put it, before the hard drive can get the information that is lost from the main hard drive, before you can recover the information back, it can take a day or longer, and take more than a day before the information can be restored back to the new hard drive. Those are the disadvantages. If one of the hard drive in an array using 4 terabytes fail and it is replaced, restoring the data may take a day or longer time. Whenever you buy a new hard drive and you want to restore the data, for the data to restore successfully, take a day or more than a day. That is disadvantages. So what is the ID used for RAID 5? Here says it is ID for file and application server that have a limited number of data drive. So here says it is ID for file and application server. You know what file server and application server is, which is server you store your files and you run your applications on. That has a limited, you know what limited is? We have that has a total number of hard drives, so you can make use of it. RAID 5. Please, I hope you understand RAID 5 very well. So let's move to the next RAID, which is RAID 6. RAID 6 is like RAID 5, but the parity data, which is the backup data, are written to two drives. Which means that when we're talking about this parity in a RAID 6, this RAID 6 parity is now written double on each hard drive. That's what we call a double parity. So when we're talking about RAID 6 is what we know as a stripping with double parity. Here is a stripping with dual parity. Dual means double. So here the difference between RAID 5 and a RAID 6, but RAID 5 and RAID 6 they look alike. But the difference is that the parity in a RAID 5 is only single. But when you're talking about RAID 6, the parity is now double on each hard drive, which means that it requires this 4 drive to do RAID 6. Please, this you must put it in mind. When you're talking about RAID 0 and RAID 1, you must have at least 2 hard drives before you can run RAID 0 and RAID 1. When we now come into RAID 5, you must have at least 3 hard drives. Or when we're talking about RAID 6, you must have at least 4 hard drives before you can run this. So, do you remember the setback in a RAID 5? What was that one? It says if a drive in a RAID 5 system dies and is replaced by a new drive, it takes hours or even more than a day to rebuild the swap drive. If another drive dies during that rebuilding, it loses all of your data. So when we're talking about RAID 5, you know that if a drive is RAID 5 and you go to the market and you get a new drive here, before the drive can copy all the information back, it can take a day or more than a day. But in that RAID 5, when the hard drive fails, when the rebuilding time, let's now assume another drive now fails at that time, you can lose all your data. Those are the bad of the RAID 5. This is the advantages of the RAID 5. But when we're talking about RAID 6, RAID 6 is more enhanced than when we're talking about RAID 5. In RAID 6, the RAID array will even survive that second failure. In RAID 6, let's assume the first hard drive fails, and you go to the market and you buy another hard drive. When the hard drive is now rebuilding, restoring the document back. So when the hard drive is restoring the document back, then now at that time, you will still be able to access the document in RAID 6. But in RAID 5, if another drive fails at that moment, you will lose all your data. But in RAID 6, you will still be able to survive that second failure. So what is the advantages of a RAID 6? So when we're talking about RAID 6, like with RAID 5, rich data transaction very, very fast. So when you're talking about a RAID 6, the first advantages of the RAID 6 is that the rich data transaction are very fast. And the second one says, if two drive fail, you still have access to all data, even while the failed drive have been replaced. So RAID 6 is more secure than RAID 5. So the advantages here is that in a RAID 6, if two hard drives fail, you will still be able to access all your data. Even when you are replacing all those failed hard drives, you'll be able to access it. But in a RAID 5, if two hard drives fail, you're going to lose all your data. That's really done. This gives us more features than when we're talking about RAID 5. RAID 6 is more RAID 5. So let's talk about the disadvantages. As we all know, there's nothing that has advantages that will not have disadvantages. So anything that has advantages, we have what we call disadvantages. So the disadvantages of a RAID 6 is write data transaction are slower than RAID 5 due to the additional parity data that have to be calculated. So the reason why that the write data transaction is slower is that you know that in RAID 5 we only have single parity, But in a race 6, we are now having double parity. That double parity make the data transaction to slower than when we're talking about rate 5 that have only single parity. So that's the first disadvantages of a rate 6. The write data transaction are slower than rate 5 due to the addition of parity data that have. So the second one here says drive failure have an effect on throughput, although this is still acceptable. So I've already explained what this drive failure, which means that let's assume that we are making use of the 4 hard drives on the server. Maybe we put the first hard drive in the port 1 and put the second one in port 2, third one is port 3, and the fourth one is in port 4. If anything happens to the hard drive in port 4, before you remove it and go about make sure that you label the hard drive, name it port 4, so that you're going to know which port you remove it for. When you now go to the market, you buy another hard drive, make sure that you do what? You put it inside that port 4 that you remove it for. If you just go there and put it on any port, the server won't be able to come up. So that's the disadvantage. We say drive failure have effect on the throughput. So the next one says rebuilding an array in which one drive failed can take a long time. You know that in a RAID 5, if you are rebuilding an array, it can take more than a day, or it can take a day or more than a day. But when you're talking about RAID 6, this one can take more, it can take longer, can take a longer time before it can rebuild an array, which hard drive fails. Maybe when the hard drive fails, you go to the market, you buy the hard drive, and you put it back. Before the information can be restored back inside the hard drive, it can take a longer time. So what is the ideal use of a RAID 6? Here says it is preferable over a file in files on an application server that use many large drives for data storage. We all know what file server and application server is. Those are the server that will store our files and that is the one that will run our applications. So whenever you are making use of a file server and application server that use many large hard drives, make sure that you are exist on it. Maybe we have a server now, and that server has a lot of drive. We can put hard drive on it. We can configure resist on it. But when you're talking about RAID 5 can only configure on a server with limited hard drive storage. But when you're talking about resist can configure on very large hard drive storage. So let's talk about the last RAID, which is the RAID 10. So this is the created RAID. So when you're talking about RAID 10 is a nested or hybrid RAID configuration, which is the one that combines RAID 1 and 0 together, which is mirroring plus stripping. So we all know that in RAID 1 is what we call stripping. I mean RAID 1 is what we call the mirroring, and RAID 0 is what we call the stripping. So RAID 10 is a combination of a RAID 1 and 0, which is mirroring with stripping. So when you're talking about RAID 10, they say RAID 10 makes it possible to combine the advantages of RAID 0, which is the speed. We know that the advantages of RAID 0 is the speed, and the advantages of RAID 1, which is fault tolerance in one single RAID system. So RAID 10 is the one that gives us the features of RAID 1 and the RAID 0, which means that RAID 10 gives us the advantages of the RAID 1, which is what? Is the fault tolerance, and the RAID 0, which is speed. We know that as RAID 10 gives us the advantages of RAID 1 and RAID 0, it's still going to give us the disadvantages of RAID 1 and RAID 0. But when we're talking about the disadvantages of RAID 0, the RAID 0 is that the disadvantage of RAID 0 is that not for fault tolerance. RAID 0 does not offer fault tolerance. But when we now have RAID 1 have already covered the disadvantages of RAID 0 for us because RAID 0 has what we call the fault tolerance. And the disadvantages or only disadvantages that we have on it is RAID 1 disadvantages, which is the storage. Do you understand me very well, please? So when we're talking about RAID 10 is the combination of RAID 1 with RAID 0, which is mirroring with stripping. So RAID 10 makes it possible to combine the advantages of RAID 0 and the advantage of the RAID 0 is the speed. And the advantages of RAID 1 is the fault tolerance. So when we're talking about the advantages, when RAID 10 offers us advantages, RAID 10 still offers us disadvantages. But the disadvantages of a RAID 0 is a fault tolerance, which means that RAID 1 have already covered that. We don't have the only disadvantages we are having now is a what? Is a RAID 1 disadvantage, which is storage. So when we come down here, so we have example of the RAID 10 when we have like 4 hard drive server. And each hard drive, the information will be stored twice across all the drive. When we have a single information, that information will be mirrored to this one. When we still have another information, it will be mirrored to this one, which means that the information will be stored twice on all the hard drive. So what is the advantages of the RAID 10? So here says if something goes wrong with one of the disks in RAID 10 configuration, the rebuild time is very fast since all that is needed is copying all the data from the surviving drive to a new drive. So the advantages of a RAID 10 is that let's assume that we have like 4 hard drive on a server. And inside the drive, we have documents of 500 gig. You know that document will be mirrored to the second hard drive. You're going to have it twice on the across all the hard drive. If anything happens to the first hard drive, maybe you now go to the market, you buy a new hard drive and you put it there. When you put it, for the data to do what? To restore back to data, because the benefit will be the benefit of the one which is the data will just mirror it immediately, which means that the review time is very, very faster because all you need to do is what? Is copy all the data directly. The data will just mirror it. That's the first benefit. The second one is that this can take as little as 30 minutes for drive 1 terabyte. So assuming that you are using 1 terabyte of hard drive. So before you can restore a data for this 1 terabyte, it can take as little as 30 minutes. So let's now imagine that you are using like 500 gigabits. It will up to 30 minutes before the data will be called back. Different from when we're talking about RAID 5 and RAID 0 that take more day or longer day before they call the stuff back. So that's the advantage. RAID 10 is faster when we're talking about restoring the data back. So let's talk about the disadvantages of a RAID 10. The first one here says half of the storage capacity goes to mirroring. So compare the large RAID 5 or RAID array. This is an expensive way to have redundancy. You know that I've already explained to you as RAID 10 gives us the advantages of RAID 1 and RAID 0. It's still going to give us the disadvantages of RAID 1 and RAID 0. But you know that the advantages of RAID 0 is a speed, which means that anything we're doing on RAID 0 is going to be moving speed. But the advantages of RAID 1 is a fault tolerance. But when we're talking about the disadvantages of the RAID 0 is what we call doesn't offer us fault tolerance, which means that anything you have and lost everything. Maybe you are making use of a 2 hard drive on RAID 0. If anything happens to the first hard drive, all the information inside the hard drive is lost forever. But in a RAID 1 give us what we call fault tolerance, which means that RAID 1 have already filled the space for the disadvantages of RAID 0. Because the disadvantages of RAID 0 is that it doesn't offer us fault tolerance, and RAID 1 offers us that we have already closed that chapter. But the only disadvantages we are now there is the disadvantages of RAID 1, which is storage. So when we come here now, the disadvantages of RAID 10, it is only half of the storage capacity goes to mirroring. So let's now assume that we are now using like RAID 5 to RAID 6. You know that we're going to waste a lot of storage for those RAID. That's the disadvantages. Please, I hope we understand what we explained so far before we go to the next topic. So if you have any issue, I would like you to issue it out so that we can talk about it more better. So the next thing we are moving to here is a Microsoft Active Directory. But before we can go inside the Microsoft Active Directory, there's one thing I want to explain to you about a RAID. So when we're talking about this RAID, how do we configure RAID on our server? If you want to configure RAID on a server, before you install your server operating system, you must configure your RAID before you install the operating system. It's not maybe, okay, you have a server, you now install your OS, after that you go and configure RAID. No. You must have already configured the RAID. When you configure the RAID, now go there and now configure the operating system. That's how you configure it on the server. So when you are running on the server, you can type control with R to enter the RAID phrase. So where you can choose any RAID that you want to use. Maybe you want to use RAID 0, RAID 1, 5, 6, or 10, based on anyone you want to be there to choose any RAID. But you have already know the requirements before you can use any RAID on the server. Which means that anytime you want to use RAID 0, you must have at least 2 drives. If you're using RAID 1, you must have at least 2 drives. If you're using RAID 5, you must have 3. If you're using RAID 6, you must have 4. And when you're using RAID 10, you must have 4. So we must have all those requirements. When you have this, before you install your server operating system, make sure that you configure your after that. So the next thing we want to talk about here is a Microsoft Active Directory. So when we're talking about a Microsoft Active Directory, Microsoft Active Directory is a database and directory service. It is an identity and access management, which is what we call IAM, identity and access management solution that allows system administrator to define who can do what on the network. Enterprise relies on Active Directory to efficiently manage their network. So basically, when we're talking about Active Directory is just like a database where our username, your information, your employee information is stored, be you email, phone number, password, user, and everything that is stored on. And this Microsoft Active Directory is the one that allows a system administrator to define what you can access on the network and what you cannot access on the network. That's what Microsoft Active Directory is. So here says as the Active Directory service. Active Directory allow you to store users' information. So when you're talking about this Microsoft Active Directory, it allows you to store your user information. You know that when you're talking about networking, you are talking about switch and router. There's no way you can store your users' information on switch and router. The information like phone number, address, email, password. There's no way you can store all those information on a router. So that's where we have what we call a Active Directory. So that one is the one that allows you to store users' information, such as email, phone numbers, and password. As a directory service, it allows users to be authenticated and authorized in order to access the resources of the network. So once you have already stored the information of a user, if the users now want to access anything on the network, Microsoft Active Directory will be the one to authenticate the users. Authenticate means that when you are proving who you are with your username and password. So when you put your username and password, you will be able to access anything you want to access. What does authorize mean? The authorize means that when you have already proven your username and password and you are able to enter what you are now allowed to do on the network, that is what authorize is. So Microsoft Active Directory will be the one to authenticate and authorize in order to access the resources network. So when we're talking about this Microsoft Active Directory, so we have the first one here, which is the ADDS. This ADDS is what we call Active Directory Domain Service. So what does this guy do? Is that ADDS is the fundamental and primary directory service in a Windows domain network that stores and authenticates network resources. So let's assume that we have a file. Inside that file, we have a lot of, for instance, now we have a company. Maybe inside our company, we have sales department and we have HR department. Whenever people on HR department want to log into their system, the system is going to ask them for what? Username and password. When they put the username and password, how are they going to know that this username and password is correct? It's from what we call Active Directory Domain Service, which means that the traffic will go to where the username and password is stored and they check if the information is correct before you access whatever you want to make use of. So the next one here is a ADRMS, which is Active Directory Rights Management Service. So what is Active Directory Rights Management Service? ADRMS use information rights management to manage and restrict access to documents in your Active Directory network. So whenever you want to restrict unauthorized access to a document on your Active Directory network, we make use of what we call Active Directory Rights Management Service. For instance, maybe we have a two departments on it. Maybe we have sales and HR. Maybe there's now a file that the sales is using to do their work, and there's a file that is HR is using to do their work. Inside that HR file, there must be a right for people working for HR to be able to have access to their file, which means that the sales will not be able to access the HR file. So what you use to restrict access to it is what we call Active Directory Rights Management Service, so that authorized person can have access to a document on your Active Directory network. I hope you understand that one. So the next here is the Active Directory Certificate Service, which is the ADDS. So what the portion of the Active Directory Certificate Service? Active Directory Certificate Service acts as a certificate authority and provide public key infrastructure functionality in your Active Directory. So what does that one mean is that let's assume that your company needs to access, maybe your company needs to, your employees have a website that they are using to do their day-to-day activities. When the employees connect to that website, how are they going to know that this website is a real website, which is a legit website? That's what we call Active Directory Certificate Service. That Active Directory Certificate Service will be the one to give peace of mind to the system that, okay, they are browsing a website. That's the function of the Active Directory Certificate Service, so that we give them to know that, okay, this website that we are solving is a new website. So the real life example of this Active Directory Certificate Service, imagine you have a company website for employee to access sensitive information. Let's now assume that this AD issue a certificate for the website. Employee computer trusts the certificate because it is signed by the company certificate authority. This ensures the website is secure and verified is a company legitimate site. So the last version of the Active Directory Certificate Service. So when you're talking about Active Directory Federation Service, which is the ADFS, so Active Directory Federation Service, this facilitates federation identity management and single sign-on access to applications. What does that mean? Is that this one gives you a single sign-on access to a application on the network. Maybe you are a SIM, you want to access the application on the network, you will first authenticate first. When you authenticate, even if you want to access another application, there's no need for you to authenticate again. You can just go there and access any information. You only log in and authenticate once. So what gives you that is what we call Active Directory Federation Service. So the next one here is the Active Directory Lightweight Directory Service. ADLDS provide Active Directory service to application independent of Active Directory and its restriction. This can also be run as a stand-alone directory with multiple ADLDS instances. So anytime you want to be using an app that is not, you don't want it to be using for all your Active Directory domain, you can use what we call Active Directory Lightweight Directory Service because it can work as a stand-alone directory with a multiple ADLDS instance. So the next one here is the global catalog. So when you're talking about global catalog, a global catalog server is a domain controller that contains information about every object stored in the entire forest. This facilitates and speeds up the search for information in Active Directory. So global catalog is a global server that contains everything about your Active Directory information. Be you username, be you password, be you everything you want to know on the Active Directory. A global catalog is the one that contains all the information. Maybe, for instance, let me make an example. For instance, maybe on a company, we have like 4 departments. Maybe we have sales, we have HR, and we have marketing, we have finance. Let's now assume maybe you are looking for a user's account named Samuel, and you don't even know maybe their user's account belong to sales, maybe it belongs to HR or marketing. You can use a global catalog to get it, and it's going to search for it and you're going to see it immediately. So that's why we say a global catalog is a server domain controller that contains information about every object stored in the entire forest. So the next one here is the Active Directory logical structure. So the first one here is a domain. So when you're talking about domain, what does domain mean? When you're talking about domain is a logical group of user and computer that share the characteristics of centralized security and administration. So basically, when we're talking about domain, a domain is anything.com. For instance, now here we have fibertrade.net. That's a domain name. Facebook.com is a domain. Cisco.com, that's a domain. But that domain is just like a centralized security. It's just like a logical group of users. When we have a domain, when we now connect our multiple systems to that domain, through that domain, you can now implement any policy and you can implement any security policy you want to implement. Which means that anytime you don't want to implement a policy, you don't need to be going to each system again. What you just need to do through that domain, you can implement the policy. All the policy will be working for the employee. So the second one here is a tree. So when you're talking about tree, please, you understand what a domain is. So an example of a domain is what we're talking about, cisco.com, that's a domain. fibertrade.net is the domain. Facebook.com, that's the domain. Anything.com, .org, .net, .ng, those are what they call a domain. So the second one here is a tree. When we're talking about tree, A tree is a collection of Active Directory domain that share a contiguous namespace. In other words, a tree is a child of subdomain. So when you're talking about tree, a tree is just like a child or subdomain. For instance, when you're talking about fibertrain.net, fibertrain.net is a domain, but anytime you now have lessons at fibertrain.net, that is a child domain. Maybe we have networking.fibertrain.net. That's what we call child domain. Maybe you have server.fibertrain.net. Those are what child domain is. For instance, another example is cisco.com. Cisco.com is a domain. But anytime we have africa.cisco.com, those are what we call a child domain, which is a tree. Anytime we have asia.cisco.com, those are what we call a child domain, which is what we know as a tree. So when we're talking about organization unit, an organization unit is a container object that helps to organize objects for the purpose of administration or group policy application. So organization unit is the one that gives us the access for you to create a users and for you to create a department. So maybe you want to create a sales department, and you want to create HR department, you're going to use what we call organization unit. So this is just like a container object that helps to organize objects for the purpose of administration or group policy application. So the next one here is a forest. So when we're talking about forest, a forest is the largest unit in Active Directory and is a collection of trees that share a common schema. It is the totality of your Active Directory infrastructure. So let's just look at forest as a real world forest. We know what forest is normal. A forest is a consisting of many trees. There's no way you can go to a forest and you're going to see only one trees. Inside the forest, you're going to see as many as a lot of many trees on the forest. So a forest is just like the largest unit of your Active Directory, and it's the collection of the trees that share a common schema. It's totally of the Active Directory infrastructure. So maybe here now, let me make a real world example. If we have cisco.com, that cisco.com is a forest. Let's now assume we now have asia.cisco.com. That is a tree. If we have usa.cisco.com is a tree. If you have nigeria.cisco.com is a tree. So when we're now talking about forest, forest is the collection of all the trees on your Active Directory. That's what we call the forest. Maybe BU Asia, BU USA, Nigeria, you are in Ghana. Those are the collection of all those trees. That's what we call the forest. So the last one here is a federated trust. When we're talking about federated trust, this is a way of allowing users in one forest to access resources owned by other users in other forests. So like what I explained to you forest here, let's assume we have cisco.com, and inside that cisco.com we have trees like asia.cisco.com, usa.cisco.com. Those are the trees. Let's now assume we now have another forest, fibertrain.net. In fibertrain.net as well, we have trees, which is the lesson.fibertrain.net. When lesson.fibertrain.net is accessing information from asia.cisco.com, that's what we call a federated trust. Federated trust is the way of allowing users in one forest to access resources owned by other users in other forests. So when lesson.fibertrain.net is accessing resources from asia.cisco.com, that is what we call a federated trust. So the next one here is the Active Directory physical structure. So all what we are explaining so far here is the Active Directory logical structure. So we're moving to Active Directory physical structure. So when you're talking about Active Directory physical structure, the first one here is a domain controller. This is the main body of a Active Directory. So a domain controller is the main body of Active Directory. So when you're talking about domain controller, what does domain controller mean? Domain controller are the server-based system, which is hardware server, that store the Active Directory database. So when we're talking about Active Directory, what makes Active Directory to be Active Directory is what we call a domain controller. It's a short. So this domain controller are the server-based system that store the Active Directory database, where your information, username, password, phone number, email, address, where they store what we call controller. The second one here is the site. So when we're talking about site, it says sites are group of IP subnets that are connected together at high speed. The purpose of defining sites in Active Directory is to control network traffic relating to directory synchronization. A site can also be the physical location that the domain controller resides. So basically, when we're talking about site is the location that your domain controller resides. And you know that the domain controller domain controller is what we use when we're talking about Active Directory. What makes Active Directory to be Active Directory is what we call domain controller. And this domain controller, where that physical server that you install domain controller reside, that is what we call. So site will be a physical location that the domain controller resides. So for instance, maybe here now, I'm using Active Directory. Where the server that installed that Active Directory is located at Ikeja. That Ikeja that the server located is a site, is a physical location that the domain controller site. That is what a site is. So the next one here is the site link. When we're talking about site link, is any type of WAN connection. We all know what WAN is, which is a wide area network. This is any type of a WAN connection or IP routing used to connect two or more sites together. So when you're talking about connecting two or more sites together, we make use of the MPLS or we make use of a VPN. So anytime you are connecting two sites together, that's what we call a site link. You know that here I explained to you a site is a physical location that the domain controller resides. So when you want to connect a location from Ikeja to a location from Island, the site link is any type of a WAN connection that we use to connect the two sites together. And I give you an example here, MPLS or VPN, which is a virtual private network. So let's talk about the benefits of Active Directory. So the first benefit of Active Directory here is Active Directory acts as a centralized management tool and is highly scalable. You know, I explained to you that when you're talking about an Active Directory, a domain controller, whenever you have a domain and all the system on your network is joined to the domain, anytime you want to implement any rule, you don't need to do what? You don't need to go to issue system to implement the rules. You're just going to implement it through that domain and all the system connected to the domain, the rules will be working there. That's the first option that says Active Directory acts as a centralized management, which means that you will be at the center and you'll be to be managing all the system. And ASA is highly scalable. We know what scalability means. Scalability means that depend on your network requirements, the Active Directory can still occupy it. Scalability means something that doesn't have a limit, is unlimited. That's what the scalability, unlimited. Maybe today now, you have 10 employees and you want to create an account for the 10 employees. You can go to your Active Directory, create the username and password for the 10 employees. If tomorrow, if you have if you have 20, you can create. So based on how your network is growing, Active Directory can take any That's what it is. Something that is implemented. So the second one here is it lets you oversee your IT network from a single console. Here says it lets you oversee your IT network, which means that you need to summarize all your entire network in a single console, which means that anytime you want to implement a policy on a particular user, you can actually go there and implement a policy. Anytime you want to remove a policy on a particular department, you can actually go to your Active Directory, be able to see all the resources on your entire network inside Active Directory. So the third one says Active Directory allows you to customize objects to meet your organizational requirements. So what does that mean is that let's assume that the company give you a task that anybody, anytime, whenever any user wants to make use of password, the requirement of the password, the length must all depend. You can make use of Active Directory to implement that policy. Which means that you cannot go to Active Directory and say that, okay, anytime anybody wants to change password, the password length must up to 10. That's the policy. And anytime anybody is changing a password, if the password is not up to 10, the password is not your password doesn't meet your company requirements. So Active Directory can allow you to customize objects to meet your organization requirements, which means that inside Active Directory, I can actually implement a policy whenever people can log into the network. That's what we call a login hour. So you can implement the time they can log in, you can implement the time they can change password, the time they are not able to, or they are not allowed to change password, you can block the website. That's what we call company requirement. Do all this inside Directory. So the fourth one is it comes with a built-in replication features that allow you to distribute data across PC in your network. So the function of, the family of DC, the domain controller. So let's assume that we have different DC on your network, the data. For instance, let's assume we have Cisco.com. Cisco.com is a domain name. Maybe we have body that is working for Cisco at Nigeria, which is in Nigeria.cisco.com. Let's assume we still have another body working at USA, which is USA.cisco.com. Anytime you want to distribute a data from Nigeria to USA, you can use Active Directory. It can allow you to distribute any data across all the PC in your network computer. So the fifth one says it also comes with a backup and recovery features that lets you restore information as and when needed when it can be configured. So when we're talking about Active Directory, it comes with a backup and recovery features. Let's assume maybe one of the employee logs the username and password. You can go to the Active Directory and tell the username and password. Maybe there's a file that the employee logs. You can go to the Active Directory and install all those files, but you must have already configured it. That's where you can back up and recover any files that you. So here at the end of what Active Directory is. So the next thing we are moving through here is how to set up a lab and how we can practice how to use this Active Directory, how to implement that policy on the network. That's the next thing that we're going to right now. So if you have any question based on what I've already explained so far, please let's issue it out so that I can explain more better. So the next thing we are moving to here is a setting up the lab. So the next thing we're moving to is the setting up the lab. I hope that we all have a virtual box. Please let's answer in the chatting box. Do we have a virtual box? So once we have a virtual box, if you don't have a virtual box, there is a website that you can go to go and download the virtual box. So if you want to download the VirtualBox, just go to this website. Please hold on a little bit. Please hold on a little bit for me. Okay, you don't have the VirtualBox. Okay, let's go to this website. Let's go to this website. I'm coming. So let's go to this website here. Just go to virtualbox.org. You see the link here, https://www.virtualbox.org, and go there. Once you are here, please, I want to know when you are there so that I can explain how you can download it. So once you are here, you choose on what you are using, the platform you are using. But before you choose it, you first need to download the extension pack. When you click on accept and download, I've already have all those stuff, so I don't need to download it again. So after that one, I'll go ahead and choose the platform that you want to use that VirtualBox. Here is the latest version of the VirtualBox, 7.1.4. That's the latest version. So if you are using Windows, just click on Windows. You will be downloading immediately. If you are using Mac, click on it. So after that, you need to download the extension. You'll be downloading both extension and the virtual package, the booster. So please, when you download the VirtualBox finish, let me know. I hope we all have our Windows. Do we have Windows 5? Do you have Windows 5? If you have Windows 5 servers and your VirtualBox, please let me know so that I can explain how to set up the lab and we go on. Okay, you have downloaded it now. What about Windows ISO and the server? Do we all have Windows and server? Please let me know. Let me know. Do we have Windows and server? You don't have Windows. So I'm going to bring so let's go to this website. I'm coming. Hold on for me, please. So let's go to this website. You can download your window here, www.mychildskills.com.